Hey there, I hope the new year's been treating you well so far, and seeing it is the start of a new year, I thought I'd make a video which ties together the topics of ambition, goal setting, New Year's resolutions, and furthering your own development and career. So I've just finished a book, and this book will form the basis and the inspiration for this video, and that is The Unfair Advantage. So what I really like about it is that unlike most traditional self-development or business books, which focus on a core set of criteria which you must attain or channel in order to be able to reach your goals and become successful, this one really helps you instead focus on your own personal strengths and weaknesses and to be able to use those to gain an advantage somewhere in the real world. The central idea of the book is that we all have one or more unfair advantages over everyone else, and these unfair advantages can range from personal circumstances to wealth to education or even to cultural insight. While reading, you're exposed to countless scenarios and examples of people who've made it and become successful despite the fact that they might not have the most stereotypical of advantages. Another very important concept which is explained is that success isn't just about luck, nor is it just about hard work. It's somewhere between the two or a combination of both. In modern society, it's easy to fall for one of these two narratives, where the first one is that in order to be successful, you have to have some kind of privilege or connections or things going for you in the first place, and the second narrative is that of the hustle culture, and in order to be able to become successful, you just need to grind and work, and if you work harder than everyone else, then eventually you'll make it. But the book does a very good job of explaining how both of these ideas by themselves are mistaken, and they don't actually lead to anything tangible. Because if you work very hard at something that doesn't actually have very high potential, then you're often wasting your energy. And equally, if you rely just solely on luck, then often you don't end up putting the work in which is required to turn that luck into some kind of fruition. I've mentioned it before on this channel, but another big thing that determines whether you're likely to be successful or not is whether you have a strong reason why you're pursuing the thing that you are. This is because entrepreneurship or climbing the career ladder is inherently difficult, because if it wasn't, then everyone would be doing it. Without a strong reason why, your particular venture is likely to fizzle out and run out of steam, because it's that strong reason why that gives energy and motivation and fuel for the thing that you're trying to achieve. You may have also heard of the terms a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, which is something that I've previously covered on this channel. But you may not have heard of a third category, which is also mentioned in this book, which is the reality growth mindset. The reality growth mindset is not simply the midpoint between a fixed and a growth mindset. Instead, it's taking the growth mindset and adding some constraint so that you're more likely to actually achieve the thing that you're aiming for. Even though a growth mindset is generally a good thing, without the constraint of realism, that particular growth mindset might be uncapped, and you end up aiming at something that is outside of your particular scope or capabilities. An example would be a 40-year-old who suddenly decides that they want to make it into the world of professional sport. But unless that sport doesn't require any kind of physicality, it's unlikely that you're going to make it, because sport tends to favour someone who is younger, fitter, and more athletic. According to the authors, the traits required to have a reality growth mindset are vision, resourcefulness, constant growth and lifelong learning, and grit and perseverance. A huge portion of the book is dedicated towards something called the Miles Framework, and this is how you can classify and break down each or any of your unfair advantages. The M is for money, and money can often fill in the gaps between your current abilities and your knowledge and take you from one step to the next with relatively little effort. So there's no denying that money can be a big advantage, and if you happen to be fortunate enough to be born into a wealthy family or have access to many wealthy connections, then it's definitely in your interest to make use of those, because it can definitely set you up for a success in the future. The I is for intelligence, and intelligence can be a very useful asset as it increases the likelihood of you making good decisions. But also, intelligence can be broken down into one of several categories. You have the traditional forms of intelligence, such as IQ, but you also have book smarts, street smarts or social intelligence, creative intelligence, and insight. The L is location and luck, and this is another way of saying being in the right place at the right time. You can have all the intelligence and money in the world, but if your timing isn't right and you don't have the luck to be in the right place, then often it's a big waste of resources, and someone else with better timing can often beat you in the competition. The E is for education and expertise, and this could either be formal education or directed self-learning. Up until very recently, and in many ways there still is, a huge status associated with certain types of degrees from certain institutions. So even though those pieces of paper can open the door into certain companies, what's truly important is the skill set that you develop, because that will be applicable in actual everyday life. Since we now live in the age of technology and the internet, information is always at our doorstep, so we no longer are required to be able to pursue a formal education in order to be able to learn something worthwhile and valuable to the world. There have been countless examples of successful entrepreneurs who went about things by themselves, picked up and acquired the knowledge by themselves, and that's what led to their success. In many ways, often all it takes is a bit of motivation and a computer, and you're pretty much able to teach yourself any skill that you desire. And the last one is status. And status could either be social status, your current network, or your own personal brand. You could even go a step further and break status down into outer status and inner status, where outer status is how others perceive you, and inner status is how you perceive yourself, which is essentially self-esteem. So now that you're aware of the Miles framework, try to think of some personal examples where you have unfair advantages in one or several of those categories. And even if you can't think of any, or you feel like you're limited to just one or two of those categories, often all it takes is a little bit of lateral thinking and to think outside the box and realize that you can turn something that might initially seem like a disadvantage into something that really helps you become successful. For example, if you didn't come from a place of wealth, then maybe this can give you some unique perspective on how most people live, or it can further your ambition because you've something to actually aspire towards, unlike many people who are born into privilege. And the last thing that I want to cover is more specific to the people who want to set up their own business. And often these people get really caught up with the importance of having a really good idea, but this can be misleading. The thing is, true creativity is actually extremely rare, and almost every successful company that you see has actually been done before, just not as well. For example, Google wasn't the first ever search engine, and Amazon wasn't the first ever retail business, but yet these have grown to become major forces in the business world because they did things much better than the competition. So if you're looking to start your own business or even climb the corporate ladder, I'd highly recommend reading the book The Unfair Advantage, as it gives some really good and actionable tips. It even goes into startup specifics, such as hiring, networking, and fundraising, so definitely check it out as it's a great read. That's it for this one. If you enjoyed the content, feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment down below. I really appreciate it. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.